Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been having a great weekend so far and are enjoying this beautiful weather. My name is Katrina Langsavath, and I'm one of the co-presidents of Project Pulse Winnipeg this semester. Project Pulse is a student-led and nonprofit organization whose goal is to familiarize high school and post-secondary students with the field of health sciences. Quite notably, the organization is navigating an online platform in these pandemic times. We have a smaller audience today, but we understand that it is a busy time of year for everyone. Nonetheless, we are super appreciative to have all of you here, whether you have been following us since 2020 or might be tuning in for the first time today. All of the executive team roles are filled with passionate and hardworking students from diverse cultural and academic communities in Winnipeg. They're also in the audience, so maybe give us a quick wave, guys. All right, thanks, folks. All these roles contribute significantly to Project Pulse Winnipeg in unique ways and helped plan this professional panel. Our professional relations co-directors, Rhea and Miguel, will be hosting this event. Boke, our marketing director, is moderating the chat and will be providing tech support. On behalf of the team, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our audience and our panelists. International Women's Day was this past Monday. It is a global holiday celebrated annually on March 8th to commemorate the cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women. It is also a focal point in the women's rights movement, bringing attention to issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights, and violence against women. According to the American Association of University Women, the nation's leading voice in promoting equity and education for women and girls, women make up only 28% of the workforce in STEM. Giving women equal opportunities to pursue and thrive in STEM careers helps ensure a diverse and talented workforce and prevents biases in these fields. Today, Project Pulse is featuring 3 phenomenal women in the field of STEM research to celebrate this legacy. We hope you are inspired by their insights. We encourage everyone to have their cameras on for the best experience of engaging with our panelists, but it is not a requirement. Please note that this event will be recorded and the recording will be posted on Project Pulse Winnipeg's website. We ask that you fill out and return the waiver attached to the email you received this morning to confirm your consent to be recorded and posted as a part of the video. If we do not have your permission to feature you in the video, you do not need to turn on your camera for the panel and are welcome to engage through the chat function instead. Without further ado, I will hand this off to Rhea and Miguel to introduce themselves and today's distinguished guests.
Thanks for that introduction, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel San Pedro. I'm a grade 12 student at the Maples Med School, and I'm one of the professional relations directors this year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rhea Gupta, and I am a grade 11 student at St. John's Ravenscourt School. I am the other professional relations director for this year. With that, we are pleased to introduce our distinguished panelists, beginning with Dr. Rachel Krause. Dr. Rachel Krause received her BSc in Environmental Sciences from the University of British Columbia in 2006. She went on to complete graduate studies in biology, receiving an MSc in biology from Concordia University in Montreal, and a PhD in parasitology from McGill University, where she studied at McGill's Institute of Parasitology and the McGill School of Environment, and held a graduate fellowship at the Institute for Health and Social Policy. Dr. Krause joined the faculty of the Canadian Mennonite University in 2015, where she is the assistant professor of biology. She teaches organismal biology, ecology, evolution, and global health. She also sits on the Science Advisory Board of AROCA Canada, a Christian environmental NGO, and on the Faith and Life Sciences Reference Group of the Canadian Council of Churches, which advises various Christian denominations in Canada on emerging biotechnologies. Dr. Krause maintains research programs in Manitoba and Panama, focused on disease ecology of wildlife and human populations. In Manitoba, she is collaborating with researchers from Fisheries and Oceans Canada to examine parasite infections as environmental stressors on an endangered local fish species, the carmine shiner. In Panama, she has a long-term research project to examine the combined impacts of undernutrition and environmentally transmitted infections on preschool children's growth within a rural subsistence farming context. Dr. Krause, we are so impressed by all of those accomplishments, and we're so happy to have you with us today. You may begin your discussion whenever you'd like.
Thank you very much, Rhea. It's really good to be with all of you, and thank you for the invitation to join you this week, especially as we just had International Women's Day. And I think it's worth also pointing out that last month, I think we had International Women in Science Day. And so there are different, we just stop and remember that being able to be a woman in science research is not something that has always been accessible to women, and in many parts of the world, it still isn't as accessible. So I feel pretty fortunate to be working in the places where I do and that I do. So I'm a biology prof at Canadian Mennonite University, where Katrina is a student. I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable. So if you have trouble hearing me, Ria or Miguel, if you could let me know. So I thought I'd tell you a bit about my education path. I understand you're all students in high school and university, undergrad. So I'll tell you a bit about education path, and then some things that have helped me out along the way, and maybe some advice for those of you who are thinking about what you want to do in the future and whether health-related research is maybe for you. So I am originally from British Columbia, so I stayed close to home, and I went to UBC for my undergrad, and I actually started in engineering. So in high school, I was really good at physics and math, and so everyone said, well, you're a girl and you're good at math, you should be an engineer. And I didn't know what that was. So I said, okay, I'll try that. And you know what? It's a great job and a great field of study. And I hated it. It wasn't for me. So I stayed in it for a little bit, for a semester. And then I kind of changed gears. I realized actually what I'm really interested in is biology and living things and the environment. Those are things that I actually care about. And I don't care so much about inorganic chemistry and building bridges and the sorts of things that my classmates in engineering were really excited about. So for friends who were really interested in that stuff, that was a great path for them. But I realized early on that that wasn't the right path for me, even though as a teenager, I had been kind of prodded to go in that direction. So I switched directions a little bit. I was still in sciences, but I moved into the environmental sciences, and actually I took a year off and I did a year of voluntary service in Germany. I worked with seniors in a nursing home, and I learned a new language, and I traveled a bit, and I got a little bit more life experience, and then I was ready to go back and finish my undergraduate studies. So I ended up getting an honors degree in environmental sciences, which was my way into biology. So I was interested in ecology in particular, which is the study of living things out in the environment, essentially, and the connections between living things. And it's really through ecology and biology that I became interested in the health sciences. I worked one summer for one of my professors who was she's an entomologist, actually. She studies insects. But at the time, she also had projects looking at parasites infecting insects and viral diseases of insects. And so I kind of, in a roundabout way, got really interested in that. Parasitology, disease ecology seemed to me like the ultimate expression of ecology, that not only are you looking at organisms in their environment, but organisms are environment for other organisms. So I just found that really fascinating. I had a few other experiences as an undergrad that give me a bit more exposure to research and to graduate students and to professors. So I did a few summers of field school, which is common in for biology students. Essentially, it's kind of like science camp. You go to a field station somewhere and you take intensive classes, and usually there's a research project involved, and you work with other students. And I found that really, really satisfying. I found that really fun. So I did summers in Bamfield on Vancouver Island. There's a marine science center there. And then after I finished my undergrad, I did a month in the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, learning about anthropology and conservation biology and kind of the interactions between those two and conserving marine ecosystems. And through these field schools, I met graduate students and I learned more about what it meant to do research and to be a researcher and to be a graduate student. And that was really appealing to me. So I didn't really know yet what I wanted to do as a job, but I knew that I wanted to go to grad school and I wanted to do research. And I eventually wanted to do the kind of work that required me to have this kind of expertise, this kind of deep knowledge gained through primary research. So I went to Montreal, partly because I thought that would be a fun place to live and to be a student and to, get away from my parents and be a little bit more independent. And also because I met a few professors at Concordia University and at McGill University who were doing interesting work and who seemed like they would be good supervisors. So I interviewed with supervisors at McGill and at Concordia, and I ended up going to Concordia for my master's because the projects that were available to me there with those professors were more, I'd have more independence, and that's really what I was looking for. So I did a couple of years of master's at Concordia in Montreal, looking specifically at parasites in fishes in the St. Lawrence River and looking at interactions between parasite infections and water pollution. So I was working partly with a supervisor from Environment Canada, so that also gave me some exposure to working for the federal government. I was funded through them and had interactions with technicians and researchers at Environment Canada through my supervisor there. And that was a really positive experience, and I really enjoyed my time there and had interactions with other professors as well. And then I ended up being invited to do my PhD at McGill with one of the professors I had originally interviewed with for my master's. And that came about through relationships that I had with other professors who knew other people and who could then recommend me. So I had been at this field school as an undergraduate with a professor who was at McGill, knew this professor who I wanted to work with at McGill, who said, who I think is a really strong student and you would like to work with her. So a lot of it had to do with my own, I think my success in graduate studies had to do with my own willingness to explore new things and go new places and want to work independently, but also because I had made relationships with people who could then help me along the way. And I found that all of my supervisors as an undergrad and master's and a PhD student, I got really lucky and I had supervisors and mentors who wanted to help me along the way and who I worked really hard for them and they recognized that and they recommended me for other things and they knew me well and they knew what would be a good fit for me. So my PhD in McGill, I was working with two supervisors who had longstanding relationships with researchers and health practitioners in Panama. And that was really exciting to me. So I ended up traveling to Panama and meeting these collaborators there. And then they had a project that they were interested in having a student do an evaluation of. So I ended up working for 2 years with the Ministry of Health in Panama in a very rural, very poor part of the country, looking at, so they were doing an intervention, improving agriculture and nutrition in subsistence farming communities, trying to improve the nutritional status of preschool children. And I was coming from a background in parasitology and in parasite infections. And this is also an area where parasites are endemic. So they're commonly found there, and they especially infect young children. So I looked at the nutritional impact of this agriculture intervention of the Ministry of Health. And then I also looked at the knock-on effects of environmentally transmitted parasites in these children as well. And thinking about health as, not just how much, what kind of good nutrition or lack of nutrition children were receiving, but also recognizing that parasite infections compete with their child host for those nutrients. And so what we find really is that children who are malnourished are more likely to become infected. Their immune system is not as robust, and they may have other kinds of vulnerabilities. And children who are infected with parasites, things like hookworm, for example, are more likely to become undernourished because they're competing with the parasites that they're infected with for the nutrients that they're taking in. And so I continue to work with, that project has ended a number of years ago, but I continue to work with colleagues in Panama. And that's been an important thing for me as my career has developed. So I finished my PhD in 2015, and at the same time I joined the faculty at Canadian Mennonite University here in Winnipeg. We're primarily an undergraduate teaching institution, but our faculty do all have PhDs, and we do all maintain research programs. So I do a lot of teaching, but I also am still very interested in research. And so I've been able to maintain a number of different research interests through collaborations, through working with other people. And so I think this is maybe a theme of my studies and my career so far, is the importance of relationships and the real joy actually of working with other people who are interested in the same things as you, and who can, through collaborations, I think we really can do a lot more than we could do on our own. And I think that's especially important for health researchers, and especially important for women researchers, that we find really good people to work with who are also interested in the things we are and have the same kinds of bigger goals of ultimately, hopefully improving well-being of people, whether in Manitoba or in Panama or around the world. So yeah, just finishing up advice for those of you in high school and university who are trying to discern what your path will be. And I'd say don't be afraid to try out different things. Keep an open mind. We'll hear from the other experts here today. So I can't say what their paths have been, but I think about my colleagues here and other people I know in research. And I think for the most part, we all tend to have quite winding paths that take us in different directions, and we have different interests that we follow for a while, and then a new opportunity opens up. And so be open-minded. Don't be afraid to change your mind and change your path, and seek out mentors and supervisors who will inspire you, and who will be interested in mentoring you. Yeah, I think that's what I have for now, but I'm happy to talk more with you all about these things.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Krause, for giving us that in-depth look into your journey into ecology, and also for sharing your insights and advice. We really appreciate it. Our next panelist is Dr. Shailly Varma Shrivastav. Dr. Shailly Varma Shrivastav is the Chief Scientific Officer at Oncodrex Incorporated, which is a Winnipeg-based pharma company. Dr. Varma Shrivastav obtained her Bachelor of Science from St. Francis Degree College for Women in India, where she studied botany, zoology, and chemistry. She has a master's in biochemistry and a PhD in life sciences from the Department of Biochemistry at the University of Hyderabad in India. During her PhD, she received the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research Scholarship, and she was also a recipient of the United Nations Organization's Junior Research Associateship. Pursuing her research career, she did postdoctoral studies at Lund University in Sweden, where she obtained a fellowship from the Swedish Institute. Her research during PhD and postdoctoral studies at Lund University was on the generation of protein-based biosensors. She moved to Canada and joined the University of Saskatchewan as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Biochemistry, studying protein kinases and phosphatases. Following this, she moved to Winnipeg and joined the Department of Endocrinology at the University of Manitoba as a research associate. Dr. Varma Shrivastav joined the Department of Biology at the University of Winnipeg as assistant professor and instructor and has taught several undergrad biology courses. During this period, she has trained several Bachelor of Science honor students and one graduate student. She has held grants from Manitoba Medical Services Foundation and National Research Council. Dr. Varma Shrivastav, thank you so much for joining us today, and you may begin your discussion whenever you'd like.
Thank you, Midwell, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. It's a great opportunity to be able to join and discuss on women in science, especially considering this is the International Women's Day. And my journey has been very interesting since all my education is from India, which is a subcontinent in Asia. And as a school student, while in my school, I was extremely intrigued by living things, which is why I chose biology as my subject for specialization. During my 11th and 12th grade, I studied botany, zoology, physics, and chemistry. And pursuing this forward in my bachelor's, I studied botany, zoology, chemistry. Living things always interested me. I was very intrigued by living cells, especially how a single cell zygote can give rise to something as complex as you or I. This was something that fascinated me a lot. And eventually, I kept pursuing my career path in biology. There were several options opened up. For example, getting into the field of medicine, and if you look at the demographics of India, it's one of the second largest populated country in the world. And so the competitions are cutthroat and very high. I did get into one of the medical colleges. I got admission into one of the medical colleges, but I did not want to. It was a private college, and I did not want to do that. I wanted to get into a government college, which is like really, really very tough. Then I decided that I will just continue with my passion in biology, and I decided to do masters. And during my getting into master's program at Central University, the university where I come from, is also really, really very competitive. There were a total of 11 seats open for the general category after all the reservations that exist within the country. And I was the 11th one. I was the 11th student to have got into master's program in biochemistry at University of Hyderabad, which was a very big achievement for me back then, considering the competition. And during my master's, I was very interested with proteins. I got intrigued with how proteins function, how proteins work. And so I decided to pursue my PhD in the field. And there were several professors in the department who were very supportive of the students. And I joined, and I ended up joining a PhD program in the same university. But this also was through an entrance exam. I had to give an entrance exam and qualify the entrance exam, and after that there was an interview conducted by the panel of professors in the department, faculties in the department. And finally, once I qualified that's when I got into the PhD program. This is also really very tough, very competitive, since it's a central government university. And during my PhD, I realized, I know that research is really, really painstaking. I worked very hard, spent nights in the lab, working in the lab, day and night in the lab. And ultimately, I got my PhD in 2004 from the same university. And during my PhD, I was also awarded a United Nations Organization Fellowship at ICTP Trieste. However, I did not avail that university because I did not avail that fellowship because I had to move to Sweden. I obtained a scholarship in Sweden called Swedish Institute Fellowship, through which I went to Lund University in Sweden, and I pursued postdoctoral studies at Lund. Here also I was working on protein biosensors, designing protein biosensors, and Swedes were extremely, I've worked with some of the very finest mentors in my field and published good papers from Sweden. Following my work in Sweden, I moved to University of Saskatchewan. I got married, and that's how I moved to Canada. At University of Saskatchewan, I got an opportunity to join one of the professors in Department of Biochemistry, Dr. Khandelwal, Dr. Ramji Khandelwal. He was my mentor at the University of Saskatchewan. And I was really very lucky to have got postdoctoral fellowship under him. Dr. Khandelwal has a very expansive research in protein phosphorylation, and he comes from Dr. Erwin G. Krebs' laboratory, who is a Nobel laureate, known for discovery of how proteins, once they get phosphorylated, how regulation of proteins occur upon phosphorylation. And following my work at University of Saskatchewan, I eventually moved to Winnipeg and joined Department of Endocrinology, wherein I was working with transgenic mice. Now, transgenic mice, these are those mice where you have a foreign gene inserted into the mice. And we were studying how this gene affects the bone structure. So I was looking at osteoclast formation. Osteoclasts, these are cells which absorb bones, and they are responsible for maintaining the dynamic health of the bones. And following the research work at University of Manitoba, I then joined University of Winnipeg as an assistant professor and instructor. And I have trained one student who has done masters under me, and several honor students. I've also taught high school enrichment course for the University of Winnipeg. And following this, I continued. I have always been motivated by the idea of bringing the work done in the lab from bench side to bedside, which is why I founded this company called OncoDrex. I'm one of the co-founders in the company, and it was founded in 2016. And since then, we have been continuing work with this company. And right now, I'm a chief scientific officer of the company, and we are conducting various clinical trials for developing screening and diagnostic tests for various cancers. Now, my interest has always been towards the health side, which is why I chose to work with that's how I got interested into studying proteins and how proteins are involved in manifestation of various diseases. And one of the diseases that I'm interested in is cancers, and which is what my company does. So my company is involved in developing novel tests for the early screening and diagnosis of colorectal cancer. Even before the cancer blows full-fledged, it can be, my test is very sensitive to detect at a very early stage during before if you look at the life cycle of the cancer, my test can detect, our test that we are developing, it can detect at a very early stage before the cancer can be full blown. So which is why it's a very important work, and that's what I'm very passionate about. Okay, and this is a very nice opportunity to have interacted with you all, and I hope that you will also be interested in research, whichever direction you choose to work in, whichever field you choose to work in. I think you should decide based on what you are passionate about, and see how you feel about the field, what you can what your interests are, and then choose your field appropriately. I was always interested in living things, in that's why I have chosen biology and health sciences as my career.
Thank you, Dr. Varma Shrivastav, for that. Thank you for walking us through all of your educational endeavors up till where you are now. And most importantly, you followed your passion, which I think inspires all of us. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Our final panelist is Miss Shannon Foster. Miss Shannon Foster is a registered social worker, having completed a Master's of Social Work degree and a Bachelor of Social Work degree at the University of Manitoba. She also earned an advanced Bachelor of Arts degree with a specialization in psychology. Ms. Foster is registered with the Manitoba College of Social Workers and is a member of the Canadian Association of Social Workers. Ms. Foster's focus of study and the majority of her experience has been upon intervention with individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders, such as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and autism spectrum disorder, inclusive of the use of alternative therapeutic modalities with children and youth with disabilities. Ms. Foster has enriched her experience by working for multiple Indigenous agencies and has firsthand knowledge of working with multi-agency involvement in the fields of healthcare, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder prevention and intervention, child neurodevelopment, child and family services, suicide assessment, and crisis management. And she identifies as a Métis woman. Ms. Foster is a research coordinator with the Looking After Each Other project at the University of Manitoba, which focuses on building cross-sector knowledge and understanding of dignity-promoting approaches for children, adults, families, and communities impacted by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Ms. Foster, you're doing great work in your community, and we appreciate you being here with us. You may begin your discussion whenever you'd like.
Well, thank you. To the other ladies that spoke, I really appreciated your stories and the similarities and the differences between all of our stories, I'm sure, as I share. I'm just very humbled and amazed by you both. So as I kind of thought of what drew me to the field of research and how did I get here? I was trying to figure it out, and I thought, when I was little, I don't remember thinking, I'm going to be a social worker when I grow up. And I definitely don't remember thinking, I'm going to end up in the field of research. Like all kids, I had dreams of being things like a paleontologist, traveling the world, digging up dinosaur bones, maybe a marine biologist, or hey, maybe I could be a waitress. You know, like social worker, researcher, they weren't really even on my radar. I got into the field of research in a similar way to how I got into social work. I sort of fell into it. When I was 18, I graduated high school knowing I was going to go to university and that I was really good at two things, math and people. So naturally I thought, well, I guess I'm going to go be an accountant. That's what everybody told me I should do. You're really good at math. That's what you do when you're good at math. Yeah, no. Let me tell you, crunching numbers all day sounds awful to me now, but then I knew numbers that made sense to me. And people who are really good at math just became accountants. So I grew up thinking that's what I was going to do. My first year of university really changed that. I found psychology. I took it as an elective, and it just completely changed my direction. From there, I graduated with my BA in psychology after a few years, and then I endeavored on the dreaded job search. Here I was, world, I have my BA, hire me. As we know, that can be a hard search. So in the end, I found an ad in the paper looking for somebody who had a BSW, which I had no idea what that was, or a combination of experience and schooling. Well, that sounds like me. So away I went, I applied, and when you know it, I got the job. It was a mentoring position at an Indigenous Health Center working in an FASD prevention program in downtown Winnipeg. I was on my way. Little did I know that job would actually alter my course so drastically. Not only did I fall into social work, but I would ultimately fall in love with social work. And from there, I would go on to work with Child and Family Services and then into the world of public health. I worked within the health authority within my region, again, working with individuals with FASD and women who drink during their pregnancies, doing intervention work and advocacy for almost 7 years. I spent a good majority of those years also working on a second undergraduate degree at the University of Manitoba and then a graduate degree at the University of Manitoba, and ended up with my master's. So how did all of that get me into research? I met some amazing people along the way, and very similar to some of the stories that these ladies shared, you find somebody who sees something in you and wants to mentor that and saw that potential. I had joined a few committees along the way. I had joined coalitions in the field of FASD, and some of those people that I worked with were from the University of Manitoba and were partners in doing research in the promotion of dignity for individuals with FASD. After some time, and happening to connect at conferences and meetings and building relationships, I had a researcher inquire if I had ever been interested in doing research. My instant reaction, no way. Research sounds like a lot of number crunching, boring meetings, sitting behind a computer screen, and all of these things. And if there was something that I knew about myself, it was I loved working with real people, doing practical work, being on the scene and not really discussing policy and stats and reading articles. There is absolutely no way that you are going to be able to get me to do research. So then I went and had lunch with her. And by the end of the lunch, I had agreed that I was going to do research. As I said, I fell into it, and it was just something through a connection with the right people and all of the jobs and the experiences that I had that came to work, or I came to work as a research coordinator with the University of Manitoba. I work in the disciplines of social policy, prevention, relations, and interdisciplinary studies within a partnership of post-secondary institutions, intersectoral provincial departments, FASD specific organizations, and other non-governmental agencies. I coordinate a team of research assistants, both graduate and undergraduate, and I work alongside the primary investigators of the project in planning how the whole project is going to run. Since I've worked in the field of FASD for so many years, I also head the recruitment of participants for all of the research methodologies that we run. My ability to have one foot on the research side and one foot in the field of FASD has been monumental in bringing people to the research that we do. My path might be a little bit different than most, but what it really highlights, and something that is a takeaway for you guys, is that we all find our path in different ways, and there's no single way that you have to take to get into research or the job that you end up choosing. Also, that you should never undervalue yourself or undervalue your opportunities, your experience, your schooling, all of those things, all of those jobs that I did added to my own individualized experience and skill set, which combined to get me where I am now. And it is essential that you take your experiences and learn something from everything that you do. You bring to the table a wealth of life experience that makes you unique, and nobody has the experiences that you do, and everybody brings something to that table. The work that we do, or the research that I do, is very social work based, very public health based, health sciences. So it's not like working in a lab or running tests and looking at some of the amazing work that you ladies have spoken to. It's more about qualitative conversations with real people, listening to their stories, hearing their narratives, and giving them the opportunity to have their own voice. The study that I work with is participatory, and in which we work together with communities, families, individuals, organizations. We do fun things like art-based activities, or take pictures and interview people based on the photos that they take, and use those as tools to hear their stories. We have community cafes where people come together to share their experiences of discrimination and stigma and success within their communities. We sit down with elders and we do elders circles to have knowledge mobilization and translation and sharing from Indigenous communities to the research that we're doing. We also do individual interviews with people about their real life stories. And when I think back to how my first reaction was when she wanted me to join the world of research, and now I think what surprised me was the passion that researchers have to make real change for real people. And that the work that's being done at the research level often helps us better understand the challenges and real life issues that people are really struggling with, and how to help or bring attention to these challenges. Also, what really surprised me was I actually really enjoy it. A day in my life in research can be planning meetings and having discussions with other researchers around the things that we are passionate about. We also do things that are fun and inspiring, and I get to spend a bunch of my time with adolescents and families and parents and communities that live with FASD, and I get to hear their stories, and we get to make art together and take photos together and chat about their lives, and I love it. I guess, you know, maybe the research that I do is a little bit different in terms of the research in the medical field, but what I've really learned is that research in the social work field can change people's lives. And it can in the medical field as well, obviously. But that was surprising for me, or something that I learned along the way. And you know, I just love the fact that research can actually empower individuals to have their own voice. I'm also really privileged to work with an almost all female research team. The women I work with on a daily basis are strong advocates in their fields. They're smart, they're accomplished, they're diverse, they're powerful. And many of the women on our team are from different countries, different fields. Our team has women who are social workers, human rights advocates, educators, and are working within schools, within healthcare, within outreach programs. And we even have members of our team who are actually working in different countries. Like we have one member who's working in Mexico right now doing human rights activism. And, you know, COVID in so many ways has stopped a lot of the things that we can do, but it has also allowed us to reach further areas. And just you know, even having her working in Mexico and still being able to do the research here is an amazing strength of the technology that we have, like this Zoom that we're doing today. You know, and research it's not an exception to the field of gender equality. I know we already mentioned that 1/3 or about 28 to 30% of research in the world are women. And although many women and girls are attending university, they don't often have their sights set on research. I can relate. I didn't either. However, it's my experience that there are very intelligent and strong-minded women in the research field, and specifically in the social work field, healthcare fields, and medical fields. We know that research is more accurate when gender is considered, and that women bring distinctive outlooks to the field of research. I think for those that might be thinking about getting into research, it's been said a couple times, but passion and a desire to learn are essential. The work that I do came to me because of my passion for the field of FASD and for the individuals who live with disabilities every day. And although historic and current efforts to prevent FASD have all been well-intentioned, such efforts are inadvertently stigmatizing this lifelong disorder. And that is my passion, is challenging those misunderstandings about FASD and alcohol use in pregnancy, and the negative impacts on children and adults and families and communities that stigma has. You know, the research initiatives that we're doing right now seek to improve understanding and mobilize knowledge across and beyond Manitoba to support national and international efforts to address stigma, discrimination related to this lifelong disability. And that is my passion. So if there's anything that I suggest to you, is find out what you like, find out what you're good at, find out what you're passionate about, and chase that. The field of research may not be for everyone, and it might not be the field that comes to mind for some, but it is a field for those who love to learn and have passion and have a desire to contribute to healthcare services and social services to better the work that we all do every day. There are many ways that you can get involved in research, even unconventional ways like I did. And I encourage all of you to keep an open mind and explore what your interests are. Figure out what your strengths are, and happenstance and hard work seem to have been a consistent theme today for all of us. None of us are the same, and we all add something different to the work that we do and the teams that we work with. And find out what you love to do and chase it. Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Foster, for sharing those wise words. Your holistic and interdisciplinary work with all of these communities is truly so inspiring, and we know it's creating a positive impact, so thank you. Now we will be moving on to the question period of today's